Hi readers, welcome to Novels with Nat. Today I am doing my August reading wrap up. I did not have a very good reading month in August at all. I had a lot of low ratings, a lot of DNFs, so I feel like this video is not going to be a super positive one. I need to rant a little bit about these books. So if you don't mind that, stick around and let's talk about these books that I read in August. I feel like I was in a little bit of a slump earlier in the summer, like June ish, and I came out of that in July. I had a great reading month in July, and then going back into August, it went downhill again. So I'm not super happy about that, but I am hopeful for September. But we have to talk about these books. So let's first do a little bit of statistics of my reading month. Like I always like to start off these videos. So this month I read a total of 8 books. As well, I had 3 DNFs. Now, I'm not typically a DNFer. I really do tend to push through books even if I'm not really enjoying them. And that was a goal of mine going into 2025 was if I'm really not enjoying a book, I want to start DNFing them. And so I really did that this month and I'm actually happy that I did that because after deciding to DNF these books, I did look up how they end or what the way the book wraps up. And I honestly feel like if I did push through, I would have been disappointed with those endings. So I am glad that I DNF'd them. So let's talk about the genre breakdown of the books that I read. As always, mysteries and thrillers made up the majority at 62%. I read 5 of them. Now, these statistics don't include the DNFs. I should just say that. These are the books that I finished. I read 1 science fiction. It was like a sci-fi thriller, so I wasn't sure exactly where to classify it, but I put it in sci-fi for now. And then I read 2 nonfictions, which I always try to aim for at least 1 nonfiction every month, so I'm happy with 2. And then if we look at the ratings, I didn't rate very many things very highly this month. The highest I gave was 4 stars. I had no 5 stars, no 4.5 stars, so that's a bit disappointing. But I ended up with 1 2-star book, 1 2.5-star book, 2 3 stars, 1 3.5, and 3 4-star books. And that led to an average rating for the month of 3.25, which for me is pretty low. My average rating is usually around the 3.5 range. So that's definitely low for me. The one area that I was happy with this month was how closely I was able to stick to the TBR that I had set for the month of August. I always post TBR videos on here as well, and I pick 10 books every month that I want to try to read from. And some months it goes not very well, and I don't really read very many from the TBR. And some months it goes well, and this month was one that went really well. So this was my TBR that I had set for the month of August. And I got to 8 of the 10 books, which I think is the best I've ever done. So I'm pretty happy with that. I read or attempted to read 8 of the 10. The 2 that I didn't were The Woman in Suite 11. I didn't get to it. This is the sequel to The Woman in Cabin 10. And I did check it out for my library. I do have it, but I decided that I want to put it on hold for a couple of months just because the TV show for The Woman in Cabin 10 with Keira Knightley, I believe, is the main lead character, is coming out very soon. And so I would prefer to watch that to kind of refresh my memory of The Woman in Cabin 10, which I read a long time ago. And then I'll jump into the sequel. So that's why I put that one off. And then All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. I just didn't get around to it. I would really like to, but it just didn't happen this month. All right, so now let's get into the books. I'm going to start with the 3 books I DNF'd, and then I'll talk about the rest in order from my lowest rating up to my highest rating. All right, so this first DNF, I was so hopeful for this book. I went into it knowing that it's very hit or miss. People either love it or hate it, and I thought that I was going to love it. I genuinely had such high hopes for it, and it was Bunny by Mona Awad. This book, I felt like I would like it because I think it has like aspects of like it's like an academic school setting type situation. It's got like a little bit of culty stuff going on. It's a bit of an odd book or an odd writing style, all things that I enjoy, but I just could not stand this book. I couldn't stand the writing of it, and I made it about 30% through, and I just couldn't do it anymore. It was putting me into a reading slump. I was dreading picking it up before bed, and I just didn't want to do it, so I DNF'd it. I did then look up spoiler for how it ends and how it finishes, and I'm glad I DNF'd it. It doesn't seem like something I would have liked how it wraps up. Um, I was warned with this one that it's it can be insufferable to read from this main character, and that's really how I felt. It just felt like I was so annoyed and irked just reading from this main character. I just couldn't do it anymore. So I did DNF it, not the book for me. And I'm glad that I gave it a shot because the sequel, I think it's called I Love You Bunny, is either out or coming out very soon. So now I know to avoid it. I'm not interested. Bunny is not for me. The next book I DNF'd was also one of a similar premise. It takes place in a school setting, and it was called Catherine House. Now, this one I went into already with very low expectations. The average rating on Goodreads is very low. Like, I think it's in the low threes. So it's not one that I was hopeful would be very good. But because the premise sounded interesting to me, I decided to give it a shot. But once I started it, similar to Bunny, I just could not stand it. I could not get into it. The writing was awful. Not the book for me, so I DNF'd it and moved on. And then the last book I ended up DNFing this month was All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. This one, I have to say, I didn't DNF it because it was a bad book. The book was good, the writing was really good. I just felt like it wasn't the right fit for me. I found this author's writing to be a bit waffly, like similar almost to Stephen King, where he's saying in like 50 pages what could have been said in like 20. And so that kind of like overly wordy type of writing just isn't for me. I lose interest really quickly. So I didn't enjoy that aspect. I also felt like the story was really going nowhere. Like the beginning started off really strong and I was invested, and then the middle just went absolutely nowhere and absolutely nothing was happening. And so I did make it to like the 50% mark before I decided to DNF this. And I was really disappointed because this is a very long book. I think it's hard to tell because I had the large print edition, which was about 800 pages. So I'm not sure what that translates to in the regular book, but I had read like 400 pages of large print of this book before DNFing it. So that did waste a lot of time this month. I was kind of sad about that, but I'm glad I DNF'd it. I looked up spoilers. Did not seem like I would have enjoyed it if I pushed through. So I was sad about that one, but I'm glad that I gave it a shot at least. All right, so now let's talk about the books that I actually finished. The first one was Love Mom. This one I read from NetGalley. I was approved for a copy of it through there. This was the worst book I read this month. Unfortunately, I gave it 2 stars. It started off fine. It was an interesting premise, but it just felt kind of like Frida McFadden style writing, which I never typically enjoy or like gravitate towards. And I just felt like the payoff for the book was not anywhere near worth the journey or the time investment of the book. And it wasn't as well, like it was similar in writing style to Frida McFadden, but I feel like her books are a little bit more entertaining. This one just I didn't even find entertaining. I had no investment in the story or the characters or anything at all. I pushed through because I wanted to review it for NetGalley, but I gave it 2 stars. It was not my favorite. All right, this next book I was really disappointed in, and it was the new Samantha Downing book, Too Old for This. This book is following an elderly ex serial unaliver type situation, and her past comes back to kind of haunt her, and things start coming up again. And I just felt like this book really lacked focus. It lacked direction. There was no real like mystery or objective that was going on. It was just like things happening to her and she's like trying to deal with them. And I just didn't really enjoy that. I feel like I need to have like a driving force to a story for me to really be invested. I also feel like there was no real twist to the book, and that's something that I really look for in a thriller. There has to be some kind of a plot twist or some kind of misdirection, and that just wasn't there with this book. I have been hearing people give it good reviews. So maybe I'm in the minority on this one, but I just did not really enjoy it. I much preferred the other book I've read by her, which was He Started It, I believe it's called. It was like a road trip thriller. That one was really good. But this one I gave 2.5 stars, unfortunately. And then, yet again, another disappointment. This was one of my most anticipated books for the year, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. I really didn't enjoy it. It was my least favorite I've read from this author, and it was The Locked Ward by Sarah Pekkanen. I love Sarah Pekkanen's writing. I have read pretty much her entire backlist, I believe. Some of my favorites being House of Glass, um, Gone Tonight, I think it's called. And then also, I love the books that she writes with Greer Hendricks, Anonymous Girl being my favorite. But this one I just found really underwhelming. Again, no investment in the story. The writing was fine. I didn't have any issues with the writing, but the characters, I just didn't care. It was a fine enough thriller. I didn't feel like I had to DNF it, but as soon as I finished reading it, it was immediately out of my mind. I have no recollection, honestly, of how this book ended or what happened. And I read it about 2.5 weeks ago. So that should tell you kind of my views on it. It was just very forgettable, not a standout thriller in my mind. So that one was 3 stars. Hi, it's editing me. I completely forgot to talk about this book when I was filming this. This was the last book that I gave 3 stars in the month of August. It was The Marriage Act by John Mars. It was just an okay book. It was like a sci-fi thriller. It's part of his Dark Future interconnected standalone series. And to be honest, this was my least favorite of the 4 that I've read so far. It was just fine. I much preferred The One and The Passengers. Now we're on to my one 3.5 star book for the month, and it was The Maid's Secret by Nita Prose. This book is the 3rd book in the Maid series. I've finished the entire series now. I've read the 3 books as well as the one Christmas novella, and I just really enjoy the characters in these books. Molly the maid, the main character, she's just great, so interesting, so entertaining. However, this book was my least favorite of the series, and to be honest, with each sequential book in the series, my enjoyment has kind of gone down a little bit. The first book I gave 5 stars, the second book I gave 4 stars, and then this book I gave 3.5. I felt like my issue with this book was we're getting a lot of flashbacks about Molly's grandmother and her past and what had happened, and I felt like that really pulled me out of the story. I wanted to be reading from Molly's perspective and see what was happening in the present day timeline, but there was just so much flashback chapters that it really, for me, dragged down the story. I also feel like we didn't get to have very much time with the other main characters as well. So that was my major issue with this one. But I feel like it did wrap up the trilogy nicely. It was cute. It was fine. I enjoyed it enough. 3.5 stars. So now we are on to my 4 star reads. There were 3 of them this month. The first one was a nonfiction, and it was So We Read On. This is a nonfiction book that is about the Great Gatsby and kind of how it came to be, why it's so popular, and things like that. And I love The Great Gatsby. I'm not sure if you can see it in the angle of this camera, but I have many copies of this book. It's one of my favorite books of all time. It's on the very top shelf. So I was really interested in reading nonfiction about The Great Gatsby. I have read 1 or 2 retellings, and I do have more retellings on my TBR, but I have not read any nonfiction about it. So I was excited to get to this one, and I listened to this one on audio, mainly while I was just doing other things around the house, and I liked it. It was good, it was informative, but it wasn't necessarily what I was expecting or what I thought it was going to be or what I was hoping it would be. There was a lot about F. Scott Fitzgerald's life, and it felt a lot about like how he wrote the novel, what was going on in his life at the time with his family, and that was fine. It was interesting, but I feel like what I was really wanting was the author to kind of delve into the Great Gatsby itself and like the messaging and the meaning and the symbolism, because she is a professor and she does teach courses on the Great Gatsby. So I was really interested in hearing those sort of perspectives, but I think that was just my misunderstanding. I don't think that's necessarily what the book marketed itself as or what it was about, and I should have known that going in. But upon reflection, I was like, no, this was a good book. It was informative. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. All right, and then the next 4 star book I had was also a nonfiction. This one was a memoir, and I just finished it this morning. I got an advanced copy of this through NetGalley, so I wanted to get to it before publication, which is coming up very shortly. And this one is called The Dirt Beneath Our Door. This one is a memoir of a woman who basically grew up in a Mormon fundamentalist type of polygamist cult. And it's just talking about her life, her childhood, her adulthood with her marriage and her children, and how she escapes the cult. It was very interesting, very informative, very emotional and inspiring. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I would say what kept me from giving it a 5 star, I should also mention that when I'm rating memoirs. I'm not rating the events of the person's life. That's obviously their personal story. I'm just rating the writing style. And so my one critique of it would be that I felt like the writing style could have used a bit more clarity when it comes to the sequence of events and the timeline. It was a little bit difficult to follow at times, um, but nothing major. I still really enjoyed it. 4 stars. All right, and then the last book that I was able to finish this month, which was also 4 stars, is Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. This is her newest release. I also did a full on review of this book, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I will link that review down below. It's a short video if you're interested in hearing my in depth thoughts. It is completely spoiler free, so don't worry if you haven't read it yet. This book, while I enjoyed it, it was one of my least favorite from Holly Jackson. I go into more of the details of why in that video, but while it was a really interesting premise, I just was a little bit underwhelmed with the kind of reveal at the end, as well as I felt like it dragged a little bit in the middle. But overall, 4 stars is still a good rating. I still enjoyed it. It has that typical Holly Jackson writing style, which I really liked. I will say that this book is her first adult novel. All of her other books have been young adult, and I just honestly didn't get that from this book. To me, if you had given it to me and didn't tell me that it was supposed to be an adult novel, I would have guessed that it was young adult just based on the writing and the way the characters act and speak. Even though the main character in this, I believe, is 27, she read more like 17 to me, honestly, which wasn't an issue. Like, I don't mind that necessarily. I've enjoyed her young adult books. Um, but I just found that to be interesting, that they're marketing it as an adult book in that way. But that was just something I noticed. Um, yeah, this was a good book. I did read it from my library, and I wanted to have a copy to keep with my other Holly Jackson books that I have like all of her backlist. So I did pick up a copy. This was a beautiful copy I got from my used bookstore. It looks like brand new condition. So I was very happy with that. Always check your used bookstores. There's some great finds you can get there. All right, so that was all of the books that I read in the month of August. I was able to complete 8 books, which is decent. I try to get around 10 in every month, but I'm happy with 8. I know I did have a lot of DNF, so that did take up a good amount of time. And now going into September, I'm very excited. It is my favorite time of year for reading. I would say September and October are my favorite reading months. I always love to focus on dark academia type books in September because it's like back to school. It just feels appropriate. And then going into October, I really lean into like the horror, paranormal, anything spooky type of book like that, which I'm very excited for. So I am hopeful that I'm not going to have as bad of a reading month in September as I had in August, but we will see. My fingers are crossed that that will not be the case. But thank you so much for watching this video. That is all for today. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel. It would be super awesome if you could do that. And I'll see you in another video very soon. Bye.